Breaking news from around your world on this Wednesday, August 7th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Puerto Rico's Supreme Court on Wednesday invalidated Governor Pedro Pierluisi's appointment, removing the former resident commissioner from the office he had held for just 5 days. Pierluisi was appointed as Secretary of State and first in line to the governorship by outgoing Governor Ricardo Rosselló, who stepped down Friday amid mass protests demanding his resignation. Pierluisi's nomination was approved by the territory's House of Representatives, but Senate President Thomas Rivera Schatz blocked the nomination vote in the upper house. Pierluisi was then sworn in as governor under the recess appointment law, which has now been rendered unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of Puerto Rico. The court ruled that Pierluisi must step down by 5 p.m. Wednesday, allowing for the territory's executive branch to designate a successor. With Pierluisi's appointment as Secretary of State moot, the next in line to become governor is Secretary of Justice Wanda Vázquez Garced, who said last week she's not interested in becoming governor, but would not resign if the duty fell to her. Wednesday's decision cannot be appealed, but it is expected to unleash new demonstrations because many in the U.S. territory have said they don't want Vázquez Garced as their governor. A Taliban car bomb aimed at Afghan security forces ripped through a busy Kabul neighborhood Wednesday, killing 14 people and wounding 145, most of them women, children, and other civilians. The attack, the government said, raised questions about the militants' commitment to peace despite an expected deal with the United States. 92 of the wounded were civilians, and 4 police officers were among the dead. The morning rush hour bombing was one of the worst attacks in Kabul this year. The attack comes just days after the Taliban and the United States reported progress on negotiating an end to Afghanistan's nearly 18-year war, and it again raised fears among Afghans about what will happen once the estimated 20,000 U.S. and NATO troops in their country go home. The explosive-packed car detonated at a security checkpoint outside police headquarters in a minority Shiite neighborhood in western Kabul. The Taliban said they had targeted a recruitment center for security forces. The attack took place as many Kabul residents were preparing for the Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha, which begins Sunday. Pakistan said on Wednesday it would expel India's ambassador and suspend bilateral trade with its arch rival after New Delhi eliminated the special status and statehood of Kashmir, a Himalayan region claimed by both countries. The decision to downgrade relations was made at a meeting of Pakistan's National Security Committee, led by Prime Minister Imran Khan and attended by the heads of the armed forces and senior government officials. Neighbors China and Pakistan, which both claim parts of Kashmir, have voiced fierce opposition to India's removal of a constitutional provision that had allowed the country's only Muslim-majority state to make its own laws. The region also lost its right to fly its own flag and make many of its own decisions. Nuclear-armed India and Pakistan have twice waged war over Kashmir and in February engaged in an aerial clash. India, which has been battling insurgents there for 30 years, said the special status had hindered Kashmir's development, and it wanted to fully integrate the region with the rest of the country, which gained independence from British colonialists in 1947. A cluster of recent mass shootings that killed 36 people in California, Texas, and Ohio has sparked renewed calls for Congress to pass legislation to prevent gun violence. Previous attempts to pass gun controls after mass shootings have mostly failed in the face of fierce lobbying by the National Rifle Association and other gun groups. President Donald Trump said Wednesday there is strong support for doing something on background checks, but he did not embrace a specific proposal. Trump also told reporters there is no political appetite for an assault weapons ban. A group of House and Senate Democrats is urging passage of legislation they introduced in February to ban high-capacity magazines holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, a Republican, and Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat on the panel, want to create a federal grant program helping states adopt red flag laws. These would allow courts and local law enforcement to remove guns from people deemed a risk to communities. Trump has said he wants to ensure that mentally unstable, seriously ill people aren't carrying guns. China's top political liaison to Hong Kong warned Wednesday the island territory faces its most serious threat since it returned to Beijing's control 22 years ago over the ongoing outcry related to a proposed extradition bill. Zhang Xiaoming, director of China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, said the most pressing and overriding task at present is to stop violence, end the chaos, and restore order so as to safeguard our homeland and prevent Hong Kong from sinking into an abyss. Multiple rallies in recent weeks have led to dozens of injuries and hundreds of arrests. Hong Kong has faced months of sometimes violent protests that began with opposition to a now suspended extradition law and which have evolved into a direct challenge to the government of embattled leader Carrie Lam and calls for full democracy. Protesters are demanding a complete withdrawal of the extradition bill, an independent inquiry into the crisis, an investigation into what they say is excessive use of force by police, and for Lam to step down. Zhang cited speeches by former Chinese paramount leader Deng Xiaoping in 1984 and 1987, in which he said if turmoil occurs in Hong Kong, the central government must intervene. Hong Kong's protests pose a major challenge to Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is grappling with a trade war with the U.S. and a slowing economy. Armed robbers broke into a Mexican government coin manufacturer Tuesday and filled a backpack with more than $2 million worth of gold coins from a vault that had been left open. Mexico City police said 2 people, one wielding a firearm, broke into a Casa de Moneda branch in the morning after throwing a security guard to the ground and taking his gun. One of the robbers then went to the vault, which was open, and filled a backpack with 1,567 gold coins. The coins, known as centenarios, have a face value of 50 pesos, but trade for 31,500 pesos, about $1,610 U.S. apiece, according to Mexican bank Banorte. That makes the total value of the haul at least $2.5 million. The coin was first minted in 1921 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Mexico's independence from Spain, according to the central bank. Production was suspended in 1931, but the coin was reminted beginning in 1943 due to demand for gold coins. The daylight robbery was the latest high-profile crime to hit Mexico City, where crime has increased during record lawlessness plaguing the country. Mexico is suffering from record murder levels that have made the capital, long regarded as a relatively safe haven, increasingly prone to violent crime. President Trump said on Wednesday discussions have begun with South Korea aimed at getting the country to pay more for the cost of maintaining U.S. troops in the region to guard against any threat from North Korea. In a tweet, Trump said, talks have begun to further increase payments to the United States. South Korea is a very wealthy nation that now feels an obligation to contribute to the military defense provided by the United States of America. A South Korean official said the two countries agreed to discuss the defense cost sharing issue in a reasonable and fair manner when U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton visited South Korea last month. Trump has repeatedly said Seoul should bear more of the burden of keeping some of the more than 28,000 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea, where the United States has had a military presence since the 1950-53 Korean War. An Irish government minister predicts Britain will leave the European Union in October without a divorce deal and said it will cause a severe economic shock that could require pan-EU financial support for countries, including Ireland. Michael Darcy, the minister in charge of financial services, told Reuters such a move would have a serious impact on the Irish economy as well as the European continent, and that Dublin was now preparing itself. Darcy said, Ireland is the country that will be impacted more than anybody else. Potentially, this could have a huge impact on the Irish economy. He said that financial support could be needed to buoy Ireland and other EU member countries affected by Brexit. The remarks, among the most frank yet from an Irish minister, underscored the growing sense of alarm about a hard Brexit in Ireland, Britain's closest EU neighbor and one with whom it has important trading and historical ties. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that he will take the United Kingdom out of the European Union on October 31st, come what may, even without a transitional deal needed to pave the way for future relations with the EU. Despite the hardline Eurosceptic stance taken by Johnson, some banks, such as Goldman Sachs, still expect London and Brussels to strike a deal. The Philippines declared a national dengue epidemic as the country battles a disease that has seen nearly twice as many cases reported as last year. The Department of Health on Tuesday said there have been more than 146,000 recorded cases of the mosquito-borne disease in 2019, a number 98% higher than the same period in 2018. The disease has killed 622 people this year. The national epidemic declaration comes after 7 of the country's 17 regions exceeded the epidemic threshold for dengue fever for the past 3 consecutive weeks. Several others also exceeded the epidemic limit for the first time. The country has also been battling outbreaks of measles as mistrust of vaccinations has grown following a 2017 scandal over Dengvaxia, a dengue fever vaccine administered to hundreds of thousands before the completion of clinical trials and whose side effects weren't publicized. The country's Department of Justice in February indicted its former health secretary and 9 other department officials with reckless imprudence resulting in homicide in connection to the drug's purchase and use. British Airways said its flights were returning to normal after passengers had to endure cancellations, delays, and long queues Wednesday morning at London airports. The airline suffered its 3rd major computer failure in a little more than 2 years. The online check-in system crashed, which delayed or canceled hundreds of British Airways flights, affecting more than 15,000 passengers. Customers could not check in online, while others complained of being stuck on planes, unable to take off for hours. It was not a global outage, but with so many planes out of position in Britain, flights in other parts of the world are affected, including the United States. Passengers from as far away as Japan and India complained of delays. The IT failure occurred as tens of thousands of people in Britain prepared to fly off for summer holidays on what is one of the busiest weeks of the year for the country's airports. The European Union requires airlines to compensate passengers for cancellations, and this outage could cost British Airways more than $9.7 million. And that's your update for this Wednesday, August 7th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.